Identifying who has power, the ability to push through a decision or initiate change in a company, is important in many situations, but up until now, this information has not been easily available. T-Rank can help you discover hidden power structures to improve your decision making. Our shareholder power tool calculates the degree of control of every direct and indirect owner of a given company, taking into account the number of shares they control and the distribution of shares among the shareholders. Both these factors must be considered in order to understand who is really in control of the company. These tools, which are used by banks, law firms, government institutions, and large corporations globally, can help you to understand shareholder power so you know who is in control when decisions are going to be made in a company. T-Rank maps and other tools discussed in this video are accessible via the Orbis platform from Bureau van Dijk, a Moody's Analytics company. It is possible to design ownership structures so complex that it is very difficult to understand who actually controls a company. For example, you will not find any beneficial owners or any controlling stakeholders for this Ukrainian company using traditional methods. But using our shareholder power tool and T-Rank shareholder maps, you can learn the subject company is controlled by the individual shown at the top of the shareholder map. Consider a company with two stakeholders. Shareholder B owns 49% of the shares, and shareholder C owns 51%. In this scenario, shareholder C can push through any decision, and shareholder B has zero shareholder power. But this changes drastically if the distribution of shares changes. To illustrate this concept, imagine there are 17 additional shareholders. With this distribution of shares, shareholder power is now very high. If any of these additional shareholders fail to be represented, or if just one of them agrees with shareholder B on a matter, B would win. He could, in fact, be considered to be in control of the company. This means that the shareholder, who at first glance appears to have limited shareholder power, might in fact have a significant impact in the company vote. We define shareholder power as a shareholder's ability to flip the decision in a vote. Let's examine the shareholder power principle a bit further. Say this company, the company Inc., is partially owned by ABC Holdings Inc. and CDE Holdings Inc., each of which owns 49.95% of the company. In addition, Catherine owns 0.10% of the company and 0.10% of each holding company. Adam, Ben, David, and Ernst owns 49.95% of each holding company. This means that Adam, Ben, David, and Ernst each have 24.95% indirect ownership of the company, as indicated by the black numbers in the boxes, but shareholder power of 12.5% each, as indicated by the red numbers in the boxes. By contrast, Catherine has an indirect ownership of 0.2% and shareholder power of 87.5%. Catherine is a very small owner when you look solely at her indirect ownership, but it is by far the most dominant owner when you look at her shareholder power. How can this be? We have to take a step back and examine the different possible voting combinations for the company Inc. When a decision is made, the individuals on the top of the shareholder structure had the decisive shareholder power. There are 5 shareholders, and they can vote in many different ways. Let's look at one of the voting combinations and say that Ben and Catherine vote yes, but the rest vote no. Ben and Catherine have the majority in ABC, and so ABC will vote yes. Catherine will also vote yes for her 0.10% direct ownership in the company. Together, these votes constitute a majority, winning the vote over David and Ernst, who have the majority in CDE, and thus CDE votes no. As you can see, Catherine has an inordinate amount of power compared to the number of shares she owns. She only needs one other shareholder to constitute a majority to push through any decision. If a group of shareholders want to achieve control without Catherine, then Adam, Ben, David, and Ernst must form a coalition. With this in mind, we can say that Catherine is in fact the most dominant owner of the company Inc. When a group of stakeholders together is in control of a given company, we call that the controlling coalition. In this new example, if 2 of the 24.95% owners on top decide to vote together, they constitute a controlling coalition. Most people find that to be pretty intuitive. However, It is often less intuitive for people to think about probability of control, a term used in financial reporting like IFRS 10. The concept of probability of control is highly relevant in situations with distributed ownership. For example, consider the case of the Malaysian company Global Corp's 19 different owners. One owner has 48.7% ownership, another owns 32.7%, the rest range from 5.5% to 0.30%. As we saw earlier, the number of shares does not necessarily reflect the shareholder power of an individual. In this case, the shareholder with the 48.7% ownership stake has 99.84% shareholder power and could be considered to be in control of the company. The second largest owner, on the other hand, has an ownership of 32.7%, but the shareholder power of just 0.16%. If you want to understand the true shareholder structure of a company, then you must know both the indirect ownership and the shareholder power of the owners. Revealing controlling owners has always been important, but the work has been complicated and time-consuming, with direct ownership only addressing the aspect of ownership power and not providing the details of shareholder power and indirect ownership. Let's look at one of the possible applications identifying the beneficial owners of a company. The definition of beneficial owners varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. In many jurisdictions, the threshold for determining beneficial ownership is about 25%. For example, the European Union rule is that if a stakeholder owns at least 25% of the voting rights in a company, or controls another company that has at least 25% of the voting rights in the company, it must be considered a beneficial owner. In this illustration, 2 is a beneficial owner of 1, since it owns more than 25% of the voting rights. 5 indirectly owns 32.25% of the company and will by most AML offices be declared a beneficial owner. The most interesting owner in this example, however, is 8, which has an indirect ownership of only 5.2%, but shareholder power of 99.985% in 3, which normally would be considered more than enough for control. Since 3 owns more than 25% of the voting rights in 1, 8 is also a beneficial owner of 1. Learn more about our Shareholder Power tool, which has an easy-to-understand and intuitive interface that provides you with unparalleled insights into direct, indirect, and beneficial ownership and control.